It was around 10:45 at night, and I was walking my dog Marshall, like I do every night. I always do it at night due to the fact that I have classes in the mornings and just don't have the time. About halfway down the block, Marshall stops and perks his ears, which sounded warning bells immediately, seeing as he's typically always too busy to worry about his surroundings. I look up and don't see anything in particular and go back to tapping away on my phone. A few moments pass and I look up again, just to check that everything is as it should be, and at the end of the block, there was a dark frame. I couldn't tell if it was female or male, and it swayed rhythmically ever so slightly. Now this doesn't strike me as odd because there are a lot of winos and druggies in my area. About 50 yards from the curve, Marshall barks and growls low in his throat and stops again. Being someone who's typically paranoid anyway, I figure I'll just cut through the parking lot of the old church and go straight to the other side of the block. Just as I tug at Marshall's leash and step to the right, I hear maniacal laughter and pounding footsteps, as whoever it was sprints right at me, all the while still swaying. Of course, with a quick burst of adrenaline, I picked Marshall up and hauled ass up to the church door, pounding as hard as I could. I look back to see a pale, shrunken male with a hellish and unnaturally wide grin, teeth gleaming at me from the streetlights as he closes the distance between us. Then the door opened and I threw myself in the building. One of the church members drove me home and prayed for me. Needless to say, I don't walk at night anymore. I don't know who that was, and I hope that I never do. When I was around 10 years old, I was friends with a girl a few years older than me named Chelsea. She lived on a more secluded but still heavily populated side of town. One day during winter, we decided to go sledding on a mountain slope, not too far from her house. This being quite a few years ago, it was quite rare to see children with cell phones, so her father had given us a walkie-talkie to call him on if we got into any trouble. After a good couple of hours of sledding, we were tracking through the snow back towards the main road that we would cross to get to her street. We were about halfway down the path, and the road was just becoming visible, when Chelsea pulled me down onto the ground and told me to stay down. I asked her what was wrong, and she pointed towards an opening through some shrubbery where the road was visible. A black Mercedes with a hood ornament had stopped right across from us. The passenger side window was rolled down, and a middle-aged man with sunglasses was peering out right at us. Hearing stories about kidnappings, we tried to stay as hidden as possible. We were both creeped out, so Chelsea pulled out the walkie-talkie and called out to her dad. After 5 minutes of waiting, we had not received an answer, and we became even more creeped out now that we knew that there wouldn't be any help if we needed it. The men in the car were still there. It looked as if they were talking to one another and looking over at us. Another few minutes went by and they slowly drove off. We immediately bolted towards the street as fast as we could, with all our snow gear slowing us down, leaving our sleds behind. When we made it to the main road, we looked up in the direction the car had left in. They were gone. Relieved, we started to cross the road towards her street, adrenaline pumping from the strange encounter. That's when I saw it. The same hood ornament pulling out from one of the other side streets. They had turned around and were coming right back at us. I screamed for Chelsea to run, and we ran as fast as we could up her street. Thankfully, one of the neighbors was outside, walking her dog. We ran up to her and clung onto her as the car pulled down her street slowly, very slowly, and drove past us, rolling up the window as they did. We were so afraid we waited until the car was out of sight, and then returned to my friend's house. Fast forward to a few weeks after missing persons papers started to appear all over the poles and walls in town. It was a little girl named Frederica, not much older than I was. She had gone missing a few days after the incident at the hill. The worst part, she was last seen playing in the same area as Chelsea and I. The girl was never found, but her missing signs haunted me, and I often wondered if the neighbor hadn't been there, if we would have suffered the same fate as Frederica did. I stayed at the tree alone for about 20 minutes before it started to rain. Most of my friends had already left, so I started walking home and realized I had to use the bathroom. I decided to stop at a public restroom. I opened the door into the bathroom and saw a red mountain bike in the middle of the room. It was a pretty big bathroom, so it seemed to fit okay. And I think the guy was just keeping it in there while he did his business, so it didn't get stolen or anything like that. It wasn't really a bad neighborhood, but that stuff still happens here. I walked into the stall closest to the door. I don't feel comfortable using the bathroom while strangers are around, so I just sat on the toilet with my pants still up and waited for him to leave. 5 minutes passed and he was still there. 10 minutes. God, how long will this guy be in here? I continued to wait. If I didn't get out soon, I would miss my concert. But I waited anyway. After about 15 awkward minutes of silence, I heard his door open. Finally, he's leaving. I heard footsteps, but he didn't move much. He stood at the door to my stall. I could see his feet under the door, scared and not sure what to do. I waited to see if he was just looking in his wallet or something. I was just hoping for the best. But he stayed there and didn't move. I held my breath and pretended I wasn't there, but I knew it was pointless. I was still looking down and I eventually looked up. I was horrified at what I saw. There was a single eye peering through the crack in the door, staring right at me. Why hadn't I looked up sooner? How long has he been staring at me? I tried to sound tough and said, "What the hell are you doing?" He just slowly backed away. I heard him over by the bike, and I waited. Then he went back to the stall next to mine and sat down. I waited a couple of seconds, then got the hell out of there. By the time I did, there was a really bad storm. Wind, thunder, and huge amounts of rain poured down. I ran to the nearest bus stop, which was about a block and a half away, and I looked back just once while running, and what I saw still scares me to this day. He was standing by the bathroom and was grinning at me, just staring as I ran. Rain ran down his face and lightning struck on the horizon to make it even more dramatic and creepy. I finally got to the bus stop and turned around again. He was gone. I was on a really busy street, so if he tried anything, people would see. But the bus never came. I later found out that they stopped running because of how bad the storm was. I ran a few blocks to my house after realizing the bus isn't going to come. But I didn't tell my parents anything. I just acted normal and got my dad to give me a ride to the concert I was planning on attending that night. As we drove back past the restroom, I saw the man standing in the exact same spot as before, with the same horrible grin. A couple of days later, I saw something on the news about a guy just like the one I had seen. It turns out, he was stalking people and broke into someone's house and had molested a young boy. My heart dropped. That could have been me. Thank God he's in jail now. But every time I think about it, it freaks me out more and more about how close I came to being violated or something. I wish he had been caught before it happened to someone else.